Podcasts, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast.
There are 4 lights!
Its 5-year mission to explore strange, familiar worlds, to seek out new listeners and new civilizations, to boldly go where most nerds have gone before. Join Matt and Shirley on their 5-year mission with a different guest each week as they talk about an episode of Star Trek, from the original series through Enterprise. They'll cover every episode, eventually.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to There Are 4 Lights. I'm Matt, and I'm here with Shirley.
Hello.
And this week our special guest is Joe from Geeky Faucet.
Hello.
I'm not sure if that's plural.
It's not plural.
You say that every time.
I was going to say, we go over this, and I'll spare you and your listeners the explanation, but it's singular.
Singular. All right, so this week we have watched episode 8 of the original series, What Little Girls Are Made Of, which, ironically, not a lot of girls in this are made of the thing that I think it's referencing. So... robot parts.
Nor should I also, nor should you reference the fact that, you should reference the fact that, I guess the one female in the show is kind of small, but I was going to say, when they say little girls, the first thing I noticed was that the main female of the episode is like 6'5".
Nurse Chapel?
Yes.
Yeah, she's tall.
She really 6'5"?
She's seriously tall.
She's not 6'5", but she's tall. She's walking around that episode, and I'm like, holy jeez, she's got like legs up to her neck too, which doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll go ahead and give us. She's officially 5'9", but she's probably in 2 or 3 inch heels, making her probably 6 foot.
Yeah. I mean, it's not tough to imagine a female that's 5'9" or 5'10", obviously wearing heels to be 6 foot tall, but also too, the majority. I mean, I'd say the average, not the majority of women or average woman, but you usually see a lot of women that would be maybe 5'6", 5'7", 5'5". You know what I mean? Yeah. Like to see an actress that's taller, no big deal. But it's funny that immediately when she came on screen, I just thought she's kind of like the tall blonde. That I guess is synonymous with Hollywood or filmmaking, but I mean it's funny because she's the actress I'm not really familiar with, but the character is really not that developed, and I wasn't overly pleased with it. But I thought that they definitely were going with casting that role. They were definitely going for the memorable, tall blonde. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead. We'll get started with a plot overview. The Enterprise is sent to planet something 3. I don't see it in my notes.
Hoth? Is it Hoth?
It's not Hoth, but it might as well be. They're sent to a planet where an expedition was lost 5 years ago. And a couple other expeditions have come and gone and couldn't find anybody. But this time, Captain Kirk has Nurse Chapel on the bridge to check out the planet. Nurse Chapel's fiance was the leader of the expedition. And so, of course, they find something. Kirk is invited down, but only him. And then he talks Corby, the doctor, into letting Nurse Chapel come down as well, since they have a relationship. They are affianced, and they head down to the ship or the planet where it is cold. 100. What did they say? 100 degrees Celsius, or was it Fahrenheit? Below 0.
I think they just said 100 degrees below 0. I don't.
Yeah, we just said 100 degrees below 0.
So either way, pretty freaking cold. They get down to the planet. They find themselves in some caves of this lost civilization.
I've got a lot in the tank here to talk about with these caves. So I'll let you continue the plot synopsis. I just want to point out that.
Oh yeah.
I was quite enamored with the scenery in this because I mean, considering they're in just a couple of rooms and a few cave passageways. I just, there's a lot of things that stuck with me, but I digress. Go on.
Oh, okay. So Kirk and Chapel kind of wander around alone for a minute, and then finally they run into Dr. Brown, not Dr. Brown that travels through time, but a different Dr. Brown, lab assistant. And Nurse Chapel knows him, but he seems aloof and strange. And it's at that point that Kirk has some security officers come down to meet him. Just kind of, he feels like things are off. He leaves one at the entrance and then has one come with them. And quickly that security officer falls to his death, or falls to something, because it's a bottomless hole, so I guess he doesn't ever really die, except from old age. But they continue down to the cave. Dr. Brown seems uninterested in the fact that the crewman died. They meet with Dr. Corby, and they meet a woman named Andrea. And then we see this alien sneak up behind the other security officer back at the entrance to the cave and kill him. Back in the chamber, Kirk tries to contact the security officers. He can't. And he goes to contact the ship, and before he can, Corby convinces him to stop and talk to him. And it's revealed before too long that Corby is behind the deaths of the two crewmen. The alien is actually working for him. The alien's name is Ruck, and he killed both of them off, though Corby says that was not his intention, that it just happened. So Corby asks for a chance to explain things, and Kirk seems upset and grabs Andrea and tries to sneak out, using her as a as a human shield, but he gets captured, and then we find out that Ruck can copy his voice, and anyone else's really, and Ruck contacts the ship using Kirk's voice to let them know everything's fine and that he'll check in, and they're going to stay down there for 48 hours and prepare everything for transportation.
I think.
Oh, and it's in that struggle that Kirk fires on Brown and reveals that Brown is not in fact a human, but is a complex android. So
I was going to say, I think it's time for our first pause in the plot.
Yeah.
To go over a few things.
Go ahead.
Geez, now I kind of skipped ahead because I'm picturing the shot that Brown takes in the gut, I guess, that is inconsistent with some of the other android deaths in the episode. But I want to take the opportunity to go over a couple things, because, with most of these episodes, I really have either never seen them, or if I did watch them, or if I have viewed them before, it was quite some time ago. With this episode, I had not seen it before, so it's always fun for me because I'm seeing something new, and I'm a sci-fi fan, even if I'm not a big Star Trek fan. So it's it's kind of like historical science fiction, Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go over the fact that you have these androids that you don't know are androids necessarily right away, and this kind of alien-looking creature that you really don't know what the story behind him is right away. But a couple things I thought were kind of funny. First, I want to point out that we, for the second time since I've recorded with you guys on these episodes, and I mean, there's only really the one episode before this, have had the pleasure of enjoying Kirk have a very girly and very awkward and uncomfortable looking kind of prancy move as he throws his human shield away and does a little tuck and roll back behind the table. I don't know if anybody else noticed that. I made a comment before about how he kind of pranced back and forth between the pillars in the last episode I reviewed with you guys. But also, too, again, kind of something that I think doesn't make any sense to me is, how do you have Kirk, who's this, like, you know, hero of the show and this kind of supposed to be kind of a man's man? And I understand we have the Buck Rogers syndrome with anything that was, like, made prior to 1985 or 1990, where the men were a little misogynistic and whatever. I'm not really sure where I was, but I know I was somewhere in the realm of Kirk being a little, kind of a little weak in his appearance when he throws a little brunette girl in front of him to kind of protect him. But besides the point, I think where I was really getting off point and going off on the tangent about the kind of the Kirk not being really a man's man, I think what I wanted to go over is kind of more the fact that in this episode you had everyone just kind of was like not, I don't know, it was very much like awkwardness. Like everybody was talking, and I felt like at no point in the episode when as they were discussing things and talking, and it was kind of like supposed to be kind of like, I guess, highbrow, and you know that they were Kirk kind of knew something was amiss and was I just felt like the whole time it was like there was no point where I wouldn't have just been like what's going on, or I'm out of here, this is like, you know, ridiculous. Like it took Corby forever to show up. You know, the Dr. Brown guy is kind of like, oh, you know, I'm over here, and there's this big reveal with him out from like the shadows, and then, you know, it's just like, to me it seemed like overly dramatic for not really needing any drama. It kind of, if you ask me, it was an episode that was very much so stretched.
Yeah.
Like stretched. It felt like they were like really trying to find a way to make the episode have more to it than what it really had. So I don't know. There was a lot of things I felt about it, and as you're going through the plot, I'm just thinking of all that, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to kind of give that little insight.
Absolutely. So Kirk is placed inside an android duplicating machine, this spinning wheel, and he's put on one side and the hunk of raw materials placed on the other. They duplicate him physically, and then they duplicate him mentally, with the new Kirk being under the control of Dr. Corby.
Is that what we're calling that, a hunk of raw materials?
Yeah, it's a human-ish shaped hunk of raw materials. I'm guessing that's what that was.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was, I guess, like you said, a humanish shaped. It kind of looked like a cross to me between like a human doll made out of green foam or some type of, like, you know, green gelatinous material. But I thought it was kind of interesting that they were like, this is how we make androids. And then I'm like, you're basically throwing like a slab of foam or something that looks like organic material down. I don't know how that has anything to do with electronics. But but I don't.
Yeah, space future technology.
Yeah, I guess when you put gelatinous, shaky foam green stuff into like a big human-sized centrifuge, it turns into circuitry. Apparently.
So they duplicate Kirk, and as they're duplicating his mind, he says a couple of times, "Mind your own business, Mr. Spock. I'm sick of your half-breed interference. Do you hear?" And he repeats it so that strange, not quite Kirk memory is kind of saved. The next scene we see is Kirk back in his uniform, and he sits down with Nurse Chapel to have lunch, and they start talking. And when he asks Nurse Chapel if he gave the order to betray Corby, what she would do, she tells him that not to ask her to make that choice, and that's when he reveals that he is also an android, or he's the android, so he's never actually been. He's been testing her for Corby. At that point, Kirk and Corby and Ruck come in and sit down and talk, and again, Kirk tries to capture. Or grabs Corby around the neck with a string and tries to escape. And again, he's not super successful. He runs and hides and attacks Corby with a piece of rock and gets pushed, he attacks Ruck with a piece of rock, and he gets pushed off the side of a cliff and barely hangs there until Ruck pulls him back up and saves him. The robot Kirk goes back up to the ship where he starts getting the itinerary for where the ship's going. Spock asks him what's going on, and that's when he snaps at him and repeats the phrase that Kirk kind of pushed into the mind of the android, and that causes Spock to become suspicious, and he prepares a security team to beam down. Back on the planet, Kirk finally gets the girl. He tries to seduce the android Andrea. It's been revealed that she and Ruck are both androids now. And when that confuses her, she runs, and Kirk is then confronted very roughly by Ruck, and they discuss the old ones, the ones that created Ruck and all the machinery. And Kirk uses some mind games to confuse Ruck, and Ruck decides that he has to kill Corby. So Ruck rushes off to kill Corby. Corby kills Ruck in the trade back and forth, and then Kirk talks him out of the phaser he has, and then Andrea professes her love for Corby, and in a strange twist, Corby and Andrea embrace, only just as long as it takes Corby to pull the trigger on the phaser they're both holding, and disintegrating both of each other.
Maybe it was just me that was a little confused there. I wasn't quite sure who shot who in that sequence.
Yeah, it looked like it was him pulling the trigger to me, but I don't know, because they were both holding it. So
yeah, I'm just, for me, I was kind of like at that point where I'm like, I'm not sure if it was kind of her saying, professing kind of like that, I guess that she had come across these emotions that she wasn't supposed to feel or whatever, and her reacting poorly to that, or him just realizing that, he didn't want to be what I guess he had become. I don't know. I just thought it was weird.
Yeah. It was revealed that Corby is actually a robot as well, so there was actually no one on the planet that was human at all. And then they head back up to the ship, Spock and his security team arrived just in time to ask where Corby was, and Kirk replies to his first officer that Corby was never there. So they talk briefly, and that kind of ends the episode.
Yeah, and what I would consider to be kind of a little bit of a mess of an episode, but still entertaining.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a couple of different things. So I guess before doing what I've already done once here, which is kind of like ranting and raving and jarbling a bunch of thoughts about the episode together, I kind of want to address the scenery, kind of like, the layout of the episode.
Well, let's touch base on notable guest stars and the alien races, and then we'll go to what stuck out.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So we did have some notable guest stars. Michael Strong played Dr. Corby, and he was in several TV shows. We got Sherry Jackson. She played Andrea. She was in a lot of movies, quite a few. And then the big name star was Ted Cassidy, who played Ruck. You'd also know him from the Addams Family. He was the original Lurch.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The whole time I was watching it, I kept saying to myself, dude looks just like Lurch. And I kind of figured it was the same actor, but...
Yeah. And this was after the Addams Family had aired and was off the air. This was filmed after that. So he had already had that kind of... that fame before he came to this. And he actually comes back a couple of times. He comes back in Carbonite Maneuver and Arena as the Gorn. So, we get to see him a couple more times, although I think both of those he's pretty made up. But yeah, those are our big name guest stars. And actually, those are pretty big names for the time. So, I think this is an early indication of Star Trek polling the bigger name stars for guest stars. guest roles. Other than Ruck was a robot, and the fact that they were all androids, there weren't a whole lot of alien races really at all. This was just Ruck, and I'm not sure if he was made to resemble the old ones or not. But if he was, then they were a little weird, and he had some strange clothing on.
Yeah, so. I don't know. He kind of had like the big cowl, like the big lapel kind of thing going on. And
a jacket, and almost he had like a ruffled shirt that was like lighter pinks and whites. Now we can touch on what stuck out. So you go right ahead.
Well, I mean, I'll go with some easy stuff first. I don't want to jump right into the juicy stuff, but the episode was like heavily themed with color. I felt like there was a lot of like, I'm not saying it was symbolic. I think it was just some art director's idea of a way to paint the episode. But obviously there was a ton of green and purple. Like green and purple was like everywhere, and the lighting was green and purple. The outfits were like kind of a bluish teal or almost purple and like green. There was a lot of it. I mean, it just was everywhere. And I felt like the contrast color was red. I felt like there was this constant contrast of like red lighting. Yeah. And what really bothered me is in the past episode that we reviewed, we talked about like the kind of like feathered glamour shot of Kirk, and they didn't do that as much in this episode. They kind of saved that for Nurse Chapel. She had like the feathered glamour shots, but every time they shot Kirk up close, I mean, every time like William Shatner had any type of close up, he had this like different lighting effect that they consistently used for close ups, where it was kind of almost like he had like kind of a dark, shadowy look on like his hairline and like on his like neck. And he would have like a light that was like shine across his face. Like it would
they've done that a couple of times, specifically in this series. We've noticed that a lot, where they'll cast the light over the eyes or just the face.
Yeah.
And, put emphasis there, and they did that 3 or 4 times in this episode.
Yeah, I mean they would like have a very stark contrast between like shadows and lights across the face. And I thought it was very noticeable. And even when they did that numerous times in the very beginning of the episode, it struck me right away that on the deck of the Enterprise, when he's sitting in his chair, it's really well lit. But every time they show him up close, he's got this crazy shadow across his head. And he had like this red sheen on his hair, like where you could see that they were using red light to try to help contrast the lights and the darks. And I thought it was really unique. I mean, it's just old school filmmaking, or I should say old school filmography. But it was very weird, and it's just the color contrast and a lot of the scenery stuck out right away. That was like a big takeaway for me from the episode, as far as something that kind of made it a little unique.
Yeah, and then the other thing that with Kirk specifically that we noticed is when he was fighting Ruck and got tossed off of the little cliff there, his bronzer was heavy. Like his skin tone was way off and very noticeable. Shirley picked that out real quick. And it didn't seem quite right. It seemed off and weird, and I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if it's just a matter of them getting away from themselves a little bit in makeup when they were, doing some of the takes or in between takes when they were doing different days, the shooting on different days. But it's very noticeable that there's a very easily recognizable style that they use with a lot of the filming when they're filming Kirk or Shatner, and I feel like it's consistently different than everybody else on the show. Though, like I said, they saved all the feathered, kind of wax paper look for Nurse Chapel in this episode, which to me, not to sound like I'm picking at it, but I just feel like it's a technique used really when they're trying to make somebody look more beautiful than they are, or they're trying to kind of like hide the fact that she's maybe a little older of an actress, and they're trying to give her like a soft skin look or whatever. But it's really not necessary when you look at it. Like most of the scenes that she was in, she was really fine, and she didn't have. I thought she was kind of a dull adult character in this episode. I really feel like she didn't add anything to the episode at all.
Yeah, I mean, she had a place, but it was more of a placeholder that she just needed to sit there and didn't really get a lot of explanation or growth. There was no real. We knew that they were engaged, her and Dr. Corby, but we didn't get any background information on that. We didn't get any explanation. Just this is what it is, and then they moved on. So
yeah. I mean, I feel that is definitely kind of a weak point with her character. Maybe that's why it kind of bothered me a little bit. But those were the things that stuck out visually to me. I was disappointed we didn't get more Kirkisms in this episode.
Yeah. Although he did get the girl, sort of.
Yeah. No, there was certainly Kirkisms. The tuck and roll that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There was a couple different things, but there wasn't the one-liners. I didn't feel like he had as much. Maybe the half-breed line was like.
Well, and the one at the end where he says Dr. Corby was never really here.
Oh yeah. Never, that might have been one too. I'll take that. I'll buy that.
Yeah. But, yeah, I liked that one because he paused, and I said it to Shirley, knowing that was what was coming out of his mouth, and I was right. So, yeah, I did enjoy that because it's classic Shatner.
Yeah.
But it's still well delivered and fit what was going on.
Yeah, I mean you can kind of like spoof a lot on Shatner and the way he did stuff, but I mean really when you look at the body of work that he did with Star Trek, a lot of it worked for the show. I mean, as much as it's a little campy, it's exactly what the show is. Yeah,
absolutely. And so let's get into our recurring items and hit those. Bones is not in this episode.
No, not at all.
Not once. So I think that's something I'm going to have to get used to, is that they don't keep the cast in every episode. I'm used to that from DS9 and The Next Generation. Like everybody is in every episode, and in this, that's not the case. And I'm not sure if that's a choice in the writing or if that's a choice in some sort of Screen Actors Guild thing or what. But I do keep noticing that the only two people that get mentioned in the opening credits are Shatner and Nimoy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has to do with it, since they're not starring, that they don't matter as much. So I don't know. Kirk did get the lady, although it was a android lady, and then he quickly lost her.
Yes, it was an android lady who I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but I thought it was really weird that they're basically telling you this is like a robot lady, and then in the one scene where Kirk kind of like uses a little more emotional force to try to kind of get her to feel, I'm like, really? Is he being like physically aggressive with the robot?
It was really on that edge of weird and inappropriate.
I'd say weird. I don't know if I'd say inappropriate, considering the fact that I guess he was attempting to do something there, which was kind of to confuse her.
Yeah.
But I mean, certainly weird.
Yeah, definitely. Spock is in this episode very little. He uses logic to deduce a couple of things, but there's no super logical aspect there. We lost 2 red shirts. These are our first 2 official red shirt deaths.
Yeah, I thought that as soon as they showed up. I said, right. I thought to myself, like, red shirts, real ones.
Hey, beam down a security team. We're gonna kill him. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, get that red shirt with the gray hair. Get that old red shirt.
You know what? They at least got names. I was very happy with that.
Matthews and something else.
Matthews and Rayburn.
Rayburn.
Yeah. So yeah, that is our official first 2 red shirt deaths. That brings our total up to like 12 or something. We're getting up there on deaths already. It's kind of surprising. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that we look for in recurring stuff is Uhura, and she didn't do anything. She answered the phone. So, Joe, where can anything you want to plug, anywhere we can find you that's special and interesting?
I've got something coming up. I really don't have the details. It's not related to my site or my show. It's a side project that I'm working on with a friend of mine, really just helping him out. And I will have more details to that, which I will, once I get the details, post on the website, and also probably tweet out a bunch of info on. But there's a podcast that I'll be working with a couple of friends on, just one episode as of right now, but it's more so just helping them out and then seeing how that goes as far as maybe hopefully kind of getting that tickle back to getting time to sit and record. But I'm looking forward to it because it's just similar to this podcast when you asked me to come on to it. It's a different subject matter, it's a different topic, it's a different style format, one to which I'm not necessarily having the influence over, which is good. It just means you can kind of lend what you can lend. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to that. So I don't have a lot of details now, but there will be within probably about a week, which I'll post on the site and post on Twitter as far as where anybody can pick that up. But other than that, you can always do the normal thing. Follow me at Geeky Faucet if you want to see that occasional tweeting a few times a week, or stop by the website once every 90 days, and you might see something new.
Right on. All right. Well, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Actually, there's a whole outro here, so I need to quit doing this. And you know what? We'll talk to you sometime real soon, guys.
And that'll do us tonight for
There Are Four Lights.
Remember, you can email us at therearefourlightspodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdsdomain, on Twitter at nerdsdomain, or over at our site, nerdsdom.com. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter while you're there. You can head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. A big thanks to 5 Year Mission for their music. You can find them at 5yearmission.net. Don't forget you can support us at patreon.com/nerdsdomain. And check out our shirts at /loot.